So 3 examples of the movement, and there are many more. There are people from Zambia who got their part of the movement going, Ethiopia, people from many other countries represented in this room are building up to it. It's happening. And Bibi Gyose, who works in NEPAD, perhaps you're from Botswana, I know. Yes. Perhaps you'd give a little bit of your light on the way this movement is going and how it will be possible to light some fires in other parts of Africa as well.
Thank you, David. First of all, let me just start by saying that Africa is a very interesting and complex continent. There's never a dull moment. But I can assure you, definitely never a dull moment. Even as we speak, things are happening, both positive and negative. So unless you are doing spandex, not one size fits all. There are a few ingredients which I believe can lead to the success of SUN. I'm going to mention here that there are a lot of paradoxes in Africa. So many countries have the potential to produce nutritious foods and feed themselves. So there's no excuse whatsoever for malnutrition. On the other hand, there are countries that are positive deviants. David mentioned that I'm from Botswana, and that's one of those countries. Botswana is a net food importer, and yet malnutrition rates are very low. No child goes to bed hungry. Nobody dies of hunger and malnutrition, per se. Why is that? The number one ingredient is good governance. And I mean good governance at all levels. High level, president, to the chief, and to the household. There are systems in place which are well respected because there are checks and balances. So one key ingredient for SUN is to make sure that as we go into the early riser and early mover countries, we identify the pulse points for what works in the context of governance and how SUN can come in to improve those elements. Strengthening the systems vis-a-vis governance and building the capacity is going to be crucial. And capacity not just at a very high level, but extension services. If you have, with all the money that we may have, if we don't have the warm bodies to do the work, we will not be able to get this agenda going. Extension services vis-a-vis agriculture, extension services vis-a-vis health, community, work, social protection support, as well as others, that are, in the. But more importantly, as we go along this movement, let's carry with us, civil society has been mentioned severally. I would like to buttress the point of the media. The media can be your ally, but the media can also be your enemy if you don't involve them from the beginning. Because if they don't know what you're doing, there's a risk of them misinterpreting what you intend to do. So let's carry the media along. Identification of champions is going to be another success factor and success ingredient. And when I say champion, I'm not just talking intellectual at that level, global, but also local, traditional. Your chief village, the chief of your village can be your best advocate and your best support, because no chief and no parliamentarian wants to have the worst indicators. And then encouraging and demanding that national governments put some money for nutrition along the lines of CADAP is going to be very important. It is not going to happen overnight, but something should be inculcated in their planning processes, mentalities to say, we need to put money, even 0.5% or 1% would be important. And then, how then do we, as AU NEPAD, see avenues and opportunities for this? There are continental initiatives, We have CADAP compacts, of which more than 20 countries have already signed on to those compacts. So the early riser countries, may I encourage you to revisit those compacts with a view to saying, is the nutrition component coming out very strongly? And then, all countries sitting here have national plans of action for nutrition. Let's pick them up, those strategies, those policies, brush them up again, look at them in the context of SUN. And last but not least, let me just say, working towards the MDGs is important, but all countries have their national visions. Ghana 2020, Uganda 2025, and many others. The idea should be to work forward and looking further ahead. So since I'm now at ETC, that's end of thinking capacity, I just want to say, we as NEPAD, AU NEPAD, are ready, we stand ready to work with the Sun movement, ready to go with the RECs into the countries jointly to introduce, to launch, and to work on how the modalities will be laid out to roll out Sun. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bibi. What a star. Bibi Gyozi works for the New Economic Programme for Africa's Development in their secretariat, which is in South Africa. And she used the acronym CAADP, which is the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Programme. And so she was saying to all countries, look for nutrition outcome objectives in your agriculture strategies, which is, after all, what we're about in this conference. I just was giving you some acronyms. She used one other acronym, which is REC, which is Regional Economic Commission. Any more? Can I do any more for you, Bibi?
That's correct. The regional economic communities in Africa, there are several. There's COMESA for East and Southern Africa, SADC for Southern Africa, ECOWAS for West Africa, ECAS for Central Africa, and Arab Maghreb Union, AMU, for North Africa. Those are the main ones, and IGAD and some, and East African community. Yeah.
That's a bit overdose. One other acronym. I just found out today that Bibi's real name is Boitchepo, but she didn't want it put up on her thing, so perhaps she doesn't want us to know. Is that right? Okay. Thank you. Difficult. So to Mira Shekhar. Now Mira has been a real champion. She's been one of the driving forces, one of many, behind a lot of this work. Mira, just a little reflection from your point of view in the World Bank.
Thank you, David. I'm sort of struggling to get to the mic. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you. My kids trained me well. I can scream. Thank you, David. As a privileged member of your task team, I'm delighted to be here. I think I want to step back a little bit from before the Sun framework was developed. I think we want to think a little bit about where this took inspiration from. And it took inspiration from many of the things that our three country partners have spoken about. I don't know of other committed, of as committed presidents as President Garcia, who would come, believe it or not, he would come on video conferences with World Bank staff on a regular basis asking, what do you mean by this? Why are you saying this? How can we improve the Juntos program? How can we consolidate, how many to 86? 82 programs into 26 to improve effectiveness and efficiency. I think hearing from partners like that, who really know how to do it and are committed to do it, was really the inspiration. Similarly, Khadi spoke the other day about the experience from Senegal. Senegal, a small country in Africa, is one of the few countries that will achieve the MDG goal. I mean, incredible amount of work has gone into Senegal, focused work on the nutrition-sensitive interventions and the nutrition-specific interventions, a fabulous amount of work into developing a platform and an architecture that allows Senegal to implement what they planned. So I think we have a lot of inspiration and lessons to draw from those countries. So before I talk about the World Bank, I thought it was really important to say where we take our inspiration from. Thank you to all of those who inspired us to do this. In terms of the bank's work in nutrition, as everybody knows, we are ramping up our work. 3-4 years ago, we published a document called Repositioning Nutrition, which really made the argument that nutrition is not just about welfare or human rights. It is all of those things. But the big argument, the new big argument, is that it is an investment in a child. It is an investment in human capital that will drive economic growth in countries. And I think that helped to take the dialogue further. A couple of years ago, or last year actually, or the year before, we published another document that costed the 13 interventions that David referred to earlier. And the idea was if you want to scale up, you want to reposition nutrition, but you also want to cost it and know what it will cost to scale up. As we have developed this work, I think there's been some criticism, and it's good to talk about the criticism. It was good criticism that said, why are we talking only about nutrition-specific interventions? Why not about interventions across other sectors? And actually, if you look carefully, since this is a book advertisement, this thing, if you look carefully at the framework, I understand we've run out of copies in English. We brought more than 300 copies, but we've run out. If you need copies, you can download them from the bank's website. But if you have a chance to read it, there's still Spanish copies available. If you have a chance to read it, it actually says that the framework endorses both nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive interventions, both of those. The challenge is in the implementation. On the specific interventions, we know what to do, we know how to deliver them, and we know how to deliver them at scale. On the sensitivity, on the nutrition-sensitive interventions, we know a little bit less about how to do it. Those of you, everybody in this room and outside this room, all 900 people who are here at this conference, really believe in the multisectorality, and that includes myself, certainly. We believe in it. We have a strong faith in it, and I call it faith-based advocacy. And in any movement, you need faith. But this movement is positioned to deliver results. If we don't deliver, we're in serious trouble. So we also need evidence. So the best movement is one, as I said in the earlier talk I gave this afternoon, is one that is bolstered by both evidence and faith. And that's what will take this forward. When we started looking at the multisectoral interventions more carefully to look at the evidence, and some of you heard Lawrence Haddad speak about that. He said very clearly the evidence base is actually a little bit weak. So we had to take a few steps backward and say, okay, we need to think about how we develop the evidence base and how we take this work forward. So I will end with 5 sort of very quick steps that have been identified in taking the nutrition-sensitive interventions, primarily currently through the agriculture sector. The bank has invested in the last year $4 billion in agriculture and food security and $9 billion in social protection programs. If we could make those nutrition-sensitive, there's a huge opportunity there, but there's also a huge challenge over there. So the 5 quick steps, we want to explicitly include nutritional considerations when those programs are being designed, not after the fact. We need to make sure that these considerations, they can never be the primary objective, but we need to ensure that they are a objective of the agriculture and food security investments. We need to be able to tweak the design of these investments so that they deliver on nutrition sensitivity. From an economic productivity point of view, you want to invest in large farm holders because that's where you get the economic benefit. But from a nutrition perspective, you want to invest in small farm holders. That's where you get the nutrition benefit. So it's not a simple thing to do just to tell everybody to start making them nutrition sensitive. There are trade-offs there between investing in large farm holders and small farm holders. And similarly, I learned this morning today, there are trade-offs in investing in big fish and small fish as well. So, everything is about trade-offs, and this will have to be done very, very carefully. And it's a question of raising the right kinds of questions when we are designing these programs, our agriculture and food security program. And fourth is about building institutional capacities to be able to implement these programs. And last, but definitely not the least, is monitoring and evaluating those so that we can see whether we are on the right path to deliver on results or not. Let me end with a quote from President Zelek, who this was his message, or part of his message. I see Julie is there. Please correct me if I misspeak. I've picked this up directly from the message we all got. Here, for 2011, at the beginning of the year, we get a message from the President. He said, in 2011, I hope we can gain more momentum in the fusion of our work on nutrition with food security. And we are hoping to deliver on that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I must say the way in which the World Bank has participated alongside other parts of the UN system, the IMF and the World Trade Organization in this work on food and nutrition security is fantastic, and the leadership from your President alongside the UN Secretary General in identifying these issues and giving them this high profile is so important. Thank you for that, Mira. Tom Arnold from Concern. Tom, I'm sorry that we've asked you to speak just as one or two people seem to be leaving for dinner. If you shout loud, it's like if we could score a goal now, they'd all come rushing back and we'd have a stampede. Tom, the best people have stayed.
Thanks, David. I was asked to speak about the civil society contribution to the Sun. And the first thing to say is that, in a way, David has already begun to spell that out as he went through how the Sun has been developed, particularly at the moment in setting up the transition team and the various task forces. There has been a consistent and I think fulsome contribution from civil society. So the first contribution from civil society to the Sun is in helping to shape and influence the shape of this initiative. Now, I do think that this needs to be put into a slightly longer-term perspective. And that slightly longer-term perspective starts with the food price crisis in 2008. A real wake-up call for the world leaders, the establishment in April 2008 of the UN High-Level Task Force, which the Secretary-General has the wisdom to appoint David chair of. And from then on, I suppose there's been a fairly continuous set of initiatives in response to higher food prices. One of the first initiatives was the development of what's called a Comprehensive Framework for Action in about May, June of 2008, and there was this conscious effort to reach out to civil society in drafting that document. It was concluded and was signed off in 2008, but 2 years on, it was felt that that document needed to be revisited in light of the changing world. And again, there was not only a willingness, but a desire from the UN system to bring civil society voices to a new and updated and improved version of the Comprehensive Framework for Action. Comprehensive Framework for Action, basically a set of policy recommendations to the to countries around the world as to how to deal with how to respond to the food price crisis. That contribution from civil society to the revised CFA was facilitated through a meeting co-hosted in Dublin by the UN High-Level Task Force and Concern and funded by Irish Aid last May. We brought together 150 voices, key voices from civil society, and there was a very spirited and positive engagement. And David, indeed, as he no doubt do a little bit later, was running around with microphones getting people's voices from that. But the point is, civil society was asked for its view and contributed to its view. The other dimension of, if you like, the broader reform movement where civil society has been asked and to contribute and is contributing is in the formation of the Committee of Food Security, which has been reformed and re-established and I think provides an overall framework. So in a way, the involvement of civil society in shaping things in regard to the Sun Initiative, if you like, builds on those other two acknowledgements of the role of civil society over the past couple of years. The second area where civil society has a key role is in advocacy with the national, in their own countries, let's say the donor countries. And that, I think, will be putting pressure on governments to adopt the Sun. and support the Sun Initiative. Now, that's not a problem in Ireland, as you will have gathered, because we have a very progressive government, at least on this matter of dealing with hunger. We're also having elections at the moment, so it's, but I suppose the most important thing, and where civil society has to play a role, is now at the country level of implementing the Sun Initiative, and how structures are going to be put in place within a country-led process. Structures to be put in place for the involvement of civil society is a key issue. And really, that's one of the big decisions, I think, that leadership, government leadership, is going to have to wholeheartedly, I think, enter into this, because this will not work without civil society involvement. So there's issues of structure. Obviously, the role of international NGOs like Concern or Save the Children, we can play our role by making sure that the people involved, the organisations involved at the international level, will play their role respectively at the national level. To try and connect civil society efforts at these national levels and into the global movement, Bread for the World and Concern are sponsoring a meeting in Washington on the 13th of June. A little bit like what happened in May of last year when we were looking to revise the CFA. And what we want to do at that meeting is to really take a stock take on where we've got to in many of the countries that are on the road to implementing the Sun Initiative. So we want particularly this to be focused on civil society and civil society voices. So I think it firstly should maintain momentum for this initiative. Will, as I say, take stock of where we've got to, but also involve some cross-learning. 6 months down the road, the task forces will have further done work. There will be some experience at national level, and we want to bring that together and in a way let that meeting act as an opportunity for civil society to really clarify how it's going to further support this Sun Initiative going forward. And that in turn should lead into meetings in the autumn, another meeting organised by the US and Irish governments on this initiative. I mean, the meeting on 13th of June is very strongly supported by Secretary Clinton. We're very pleased about that. She can't attend, but we are hoping that Michelle Obama will speak at that meeting. So that, I think, as another staging post to allow civil society play its role could be important. I'll end really by saying that I think what has been most interesting about this few days is the growing and clear sense that what we are talking about here is a movement which captures other people's enthusiasm to move in a direction. Jane Naidu, at a session this afternoon, talked about a number of the big initiatives that have changed things at global level over the past decade, the Debt Jubilee campaign, the landmines, etc. And he said what changed, the game-changing, was demand coming from the bottom. And somehow or other, that's, I think, what we have to get. We need the political leadership from the top, but it also must be matched by, that sort of commitment from the bottom. And that, I think, is what I think a lot of the civil society partners involved in this up to now are very committed to doing. Thank you.